If you're feeling a little anxious about taking the SAT, don't worry, you're not alone. It's natural to feel nervous about a test that could have a really big impact on your college admissions chances. Rather than spending your time fretting about the SAT, though, why not be proactive and spend that time preparing? There are lots of ways to get ready for the SAT, but at College Vine, we've made it our business to know the very best ones. When the essay section of the SAT was reintroduced in 2005, it marked the first time in more than 80 years that the test had included an essay portion. With the announcement of yet another redesign of the SAT in 2014, many wondered if the essay would again make the cut. The College Board reportedly sought feedback from hundreds of members in admissions and enrollment to decide whether or not to keep the essay. Advocates of the essay felt that it gave candidates more dimension, but critics of the essay thought that the essay portion was just not a good indicator of college readiness. Ultimately, the decision was made to make the essay an optional part of the SAT. This was an innovative move, and it signaled the first time that the College Board had made any component of the SAT exam optional. Here at College Vine, our experts have pored over official data and materials from the College Board, from a bunch of information from admissions officers, and pooled private resources and insights to create what we believe are the best tools and strategies in the industry for tackling the SAT essay. We're happy to be able to share some of our insights here with you in this essay prep video. We're going to walk you through how to prepare for the essay section of the SAT, including some strategies to start preparing now and some strategies to prepare when you're really in those few months before the test. If you're just starting your SAT prep, you may be wondering, if it's optional, do I actually need to take the SAT essay? Well, the essay is, once again, an optional section on the SAT, so no, you're not required to take it. That being said, some colleges or universities do require applicants to submit the essay scores alongside their SAT. So if you choose not to take the essay portion, you would not be an eligible applicant for any of those schools. To find the essay policy at the schools you're interested in, you can use the College Board's essay policy search feature, which is available on their website. And that should tell you very simply if you need to take the essay or not, depending on which schools you're looking to apply to. If you're at all unsure of which colleges you want to apply to, or you know that at least one of the schools you're interested in does require the SAT essay, you should go ahead and take the essay portion of the test. If you don't register for the SAT with essay at first, you can actually add it later through your online College Board account. Registration for the SAT with essay costs $57 as opposed to the $45 for the SAT without the essay. So let's move into our tips. Tip number 1 is, of course, to start preparing early. SAT prep overall is a time-consuming endeavor, and honestly takes longer than most students even realize. While we generally recommend at least 9 months to prepare for the SAT, the essay section is a little bit different. That's because a lot of your essay prep is actually done just through your regular coursework at school. In fact, anytime you write a 5-paragraph essay for school, which for most students happens at least a few times a year, you're preparing for the type of essay that you're going to have to write on the SAT exam. Of course, just because you're doing it in class doesn't mean that you shouldn't prepare for the SAT essay section explicitly. It just means that your prep time doesn't need to be as intense as it is for the other sections of the SAT, which do require more highly specific content and strategy knowledge. To begin your preparations, you'll want to become familiar with the SAT exam, and of course, specifically the essay section. The SAT essay is a lot like a typical college or upper-level high school writing assignment, in which you are asked to analyze a text and then, of course, write about it. You're going to be provided a passage that is between 650 and 750 words, and you'll be asked to explain how the author builds an argument to persuade his or her audience on their side of the issue. You'll need to use evidence from the text to support your explanation. Unlike on past SATs, you will not be asked to actually agree or disagree with the position on the topic, and you will not be asked to write about your own personal experiences. It's purely analyzing the author's rhetoric. You'll have 50 minutes to read the passage, plan your work, and write your essay. Although those 50 minutes seem like an incredibly limited amount of time to plan and write an essay, it's actually double the time that was allowed on the SAT essay prior to March of 2016. The instructions and prompt on the SAT essay section, once again beginning in March 2016, are always the same. They read, as you read the passage below, consider how the author, whoever it is, uses evidence, such as facts or examples, to support their claims, reasoning to develop ideas and to connect claims and evidence, stylistic or persuasive elements, such as word choice or appeals to emotion, to add power to the ideas expressed. Those instructions will be followed by the actual passage itself that you are intended to analyze. After you've read the passage, you'll come to the portion of the test book where you see the prompt. It asks you to, quote, write an essay in which you explain how the author builds an argument to persuade his or her audience of the author's claim. In your essay, analyze how the author uses one or more of the features listed above, or features of your own choice, to to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his or her argument. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant features of the passage. So your essay should not explain whether you agree with the author's claims, but rather explain how the author builds an argument to persuade his or her audience. Although you can expect the passages to be different depending on the administration of the exam, all of the passages will share some common characteristics. You can expect the SAT essay to be based on passages that are written for a broad audience, argue a point, express subtle views on complex subjects, and use logical reasoning and evidence to support those claims. These passages examine ideas, debates, or trends in the arts or sciences. They examine civic, cultural, or political life, and they are almost always taken from published works. Your essay will be assessed in 3 scoring categories, each of which will be included on your score report when you submitted your scores for the exam. 2 people will read your essay and score it independently. These scores will each award between 1 and 4 points in each scoring category. If the scores you receive in a single category vary by more than 1 point between those 2 reviewers, an SAT expert scorer will review your essay. The scoring categories are, number 1, reading. A successful essay shows that you understood the passage, you included the interplay of central ideas and important details, and you showed an effective use of textual evidence. Basically, you understood how to read the passage. Category number 2 is analysis. A successful essay shows your understanding of how the author builds an argument by examining the author's use of evidence, reasoning, and other stylistic and persuasive techniques, supporting and developing claims with well-chosen evidence from the passage. And then thirdly, the writing component of your scoring. A successful essay is focused, organized, and precise, with an appropriate style and tone that varies sentence structure and follows the conventions of standard written English. So that's all you need to know about the SAT essay, but another way that you can start your more casual preparations is just by practicing your writing. Because of its similarity to upper-level high school writing assignments, one of the best ways to prepare for the SAT essay is just to work hard on your academic writing skills whenever you get the chance. This means actually paying attention to comments from your teachers on your essays, practicing traditional 5-paragraph essay format, and getting used to analyze textual evidence and including it in your writing. Khan Academy has compiled an official SAT essay glossary of key terms for the essay, and getting used to incorporating those terms in your writing now will make them feel a lot more natural for you to use on test day. You can find this resource online with a simple query through any search engine. A solid grasp of that SAT essay vocabulary will allow you to use the correct words to describe the literary devices you discuss, which is very important in your essay. And beyond that, the glossary can help give you some ideas for possible features that you can use in future analyses. Another way to prepare for the SAT essay is to just practice your reading skills. So you should just try to read often and read a lot. Your ability to write well really does depend on your ability to think like a writer. And by reading more, you're exposing yourself to the thoughts of other writers as they have put down on paper. You're basically trying to emulate the great works of other writers. The passage for the SAT essay will always argue one side of a debate or topic. So opinion pieces, editorials, and persuasive essays are all similar content that might be helpful to read up on in advance of your essay. You just want to be familiar with that style of kind of opinionated writing. So as you read, you want to make mental notes on the methods that the authors use to make their points. You might want to recognize patterns in those methods across pieces. So for example, you might notice that casual diction is used to create a feeling of communal cause to bring everyone into the movement. These are points that you can also use in your analysis on the SAT essay if they do happen to apply to the particular passage that you receive. Another tip is to become a more active reader. So beyond reading, you want to be actively reading. This is going to take you right back to your early high school and maybe even middle school years. But to be efficient on the SAT essay, you need to read closely and carefully in a pretty limited amount of time. You want to stay engaged in the passage and make effective notations that will ultimately aid your analysis when you begin writing. So you're probably familiar with some active reading strategies, and if that's the case, you just want to stick with whatever notation you normally use when you're doing active reading. There's no right way to do active reading. You just want to make sure that your markings on the text keep you actively engaged and make your writing process easier once it comes time to plan your essay. Your notation could include circling or bracketing off thesis statements. You might underline supporting details or come up with a system to mark for different literary devices. So for example, you might put a little heart in the margin to denote an emotional appeal. If part of the argument seems unclear, you might put a question mark in the margin so that you know that that's a paragraph you should come back to later to try and sort out. So those are all kind of casual prep techniques, but around 3 months before your first SAT, you want to begin preparing more earnestly, specifically for the essay section. So here are our 4 key strategies that you want to perfect before you go into test day for the SAT essay. Number 1, you want to remember the prompt. On test day, you're only going to have 50 minutes to read the passage, plan your analysis, and write your essay. And because that's such a short amount of time, every minute really does count. Because the prompt is the same on each SAT, you can save yourself some very valuable time by remembering exactly what the prompt asks you to do. That way, you won't have to bother reading that section of instructions on the day of your exam. Also, remember that the prompt is asking only for your analysis. It's not asking you to summarize the passage or state your own opinion of it. Instead, while reading and creating a rough outline, you should focus on restating the main point that the author is arguing and analyzing how that point is made. Use only evidence taken directly from the passage and focus on how the author uses this evidence, reasoning, and other rhetorical techniques to build a convincing argument around their point, but you don't need to agree or disagree. In short, when you begin your essay on test day, you want to be able to skip reading the actual prompt and get straight into the heart of it by examining the author's choices in presenting their argument. You don't want to waste any time summarizing the content of the passage or stating your own opinion of the passage. Strategy number 2 is to create a rough outline of your essay. When you're under pressure to create a well-written essay in a pretty limited amount of time, it can be tempting to skip the outline and just dive straight into writing your first sentence. But you really don't want to fall into this thinking. While an outline may indeed take some time to create, it ultimately saves you a lot of time and effort during the actual writing process. The bulk of the outline you create should focus on the body paragraphs of your essay. You should have 3 main points that you want to highlight, and each of those points should be a specific method that the author uses to argue his or her point. These points could include the use of logic, an appeal to emotion, or the style of diction or tone in the essay. As you read, identify the primary ways in which the author supports his or her argument. List the 3 most relevant methods in your outline and then briefly cite examples of each of those methods underneath. That very rough outline will shape the bulk of your essay, and it saves you a lot of time because then you can just write without having to go back and remember the details and search for them through the passage. Strategy number 3 is to stick to the standard 5-paragraph essay format. By this point in your high school career, you probably have some experience writing the standard 5-paragraph essay. Hopefully the format is already familiar to you. But as a refresher, a 5-paragraph essay is generally structured like this. Part 1 is the introductory paragraph. In this paragraph, you want to give some very basic background about the topic. So for instance, why the author is actually writing this piece. You want to restate the author's argument very clearly to demonstrate that you understood it. And you want to write a concise thesis statement that summarizes the 3 ways in which the author proves his or her point. From the intro, you want to move into part 2, which is the body paragraphs. You'll craft 1 body paragraph per method used by the author. In each paragraph, you'll include 2 to 3 specific examples directly from the passage, and then you will analyze how effective each of those examples was in supporting that overall method. And then lastly, part 3 is just the conclusion, in which you will, of course, restate your thesis, you'll briefly summarize the effectiveness of the author's argument, and then you'll wrap up the whole essay with some nice concluding sentence. While you may feel that 50 minutes is not enough time to plan and write an entire 5-paragraph essay, you're best off keeping each paragraph brief and to the point, rather than writing a more detailed essay in a shorter or different format. Remember that each body paragraph should only be 5 or 6 sentences, and your intro and conclusion can be even shorter as long as you write those few sentences effectively. Strategy number 4, our last strategy, is to keep these key questions in mind when you're working through the essay section. So it's easy to get off track when you're under pressure and you're really rushing to complete a task in a certain amount of time. You should try to remember these questions to ensure that your essay is staying on track throughout those 50 minutes. Number 1, does the author use facts or logic to support claims? How does he or she do so? Is this effective? Could it be more effective? How so? Discussing the author's use of logic, often called an appeal to logos, speaks directly to an audience's sense of reason. This is a very effective method of persuasion since it will just make sense to most readers because it's logical. Next question you should ask, what stylistic rhetorical devices does the author use to support their claims? Another common strategy used by authors involves the style and flow of their words. Does he or she make use of analogies, word repetition, or alliteration? These are all rhetorical devices about which you could write in your essay. Another question is, how does specific word choice contribute to the overall effectiveness of the piece? We know that words are powerful. They can elicit emotions. They can create a sense of common cause. They can use precision to really draw pictures in your mind and evoke emotion. What word choices are particularly powerful in the passage? Are there any patterns of word choices that are worth mentioning? Of course, those questions are just a few of the many ideas that you can use to get started with shaping and organizing your analysis of a particular passage. It's a good idea to have kind of memorized a handful of possible questions to consider when reading, because those questions can help guide your thinking and can pull you out of a difficult situation if you suddenly draw a blank during the SAT. Planning and writing a 5-paragraph essay in under an hour is a tall order, but this task will become easier with our final tip for SAT essay prep, which is simply to practice, practice, practice. There are plenty of official practice tests that are available from the College Board. You just really need to get used to the format, the pace, and the content of the essay, and the easiest way to do that is through practice and capitalizing on the free practice materials provided by the College Board. Just doing practice exams is really the most effective way to prep for the SAT essay. For more help preparing for the essay section of your SAT, or for any other SAT section, you can check out our series of SAT tips and guides, which are available on our blog at blog.collegevine.com. Or for more personalized help, you can call today and subscribe to our email list online. Best of luck with your SAT essay.